Welcome to the HyperFast Agent Growth Show. Get real strategies, real results, and real estate them differently. Lead generation, team building, AI, and more from billion-dollar agents, best-selling authors, international speakers, and real estate coaches, Kerry Shull and Dan Lesniak. Let's dive in!
All right, welcome back to the HyperFast Agent Growth Show. We've got our panel today talking the latest and greatest real estate news, as well as the things that you need to do right now in this market, in your business, if you want to be wealthy in real estate. So a lot to talk about today. We got an interesting news story out of Florida, Golden Beach. That's an area near Miami. Real estate agent just won a $48 million settlement in a jury trial. This relates to the buyer broker. We're going to get into that, what it means for your business. Google Home Search, we talked a lot about them last week. They are expanding their efforts to get agents to place their listings on Google Search. They're offering a lot of great terms for that, and you know, they're in several markets looking to expand aggressively. We've got interesting story from James on the seasonality of home buying and the real estate market and the shifts in that and what it means for you and your business, as well as an important story from Carl on why you need to work with the right lender and how it can actually help you win deals, plus what you need to do to make sure your business doesn't take a summer vacation. So let's dive into it. This story, I think, out of Miami is super interesting. Of course, like crazy things always, crazy stories always come out of Florida and Miami area. But this, I'm going to read some of the highlights of this article here. So, a Miami-Dade jury just turned a small real estate deal. This was like a right around $3 million deal. So for Miami, that's small. I know for many of you, that would be like the largest deal of your life. But small deal in Miami, $84,000 commission fight, right? So the buyer agreed to terms on a deal and then pulled out the last second, resubmitted an offer with the exact same terms with his sister. All right, so cut that original buyer broker out of the deal. They had a signed buyer broker agreement. Apparently this broker, this is some interesting background and maybe why the jury did what they did. The buyer had been working with him in 2018. So working with him for a while, got the deal he wanted. The guy pulled out, rewrote with his sister. Sister credited back everything, all that commission to him at closing except for $5,000. Wow. And this eventually went to a jury trial. They awarded $47.8 million to the broker. It was $19 million in change in compensatory damages, $28 million in punitive damage. So huge amounts on compensatory and punitive damages. I don't know how they calculated that. That's probably more money than this dude would make in his whole entire real estate career, or at least for most. Goldstein's lawyer said the verdict is a warning shot to anyone tempted to squeeze out of a buyer broker through a setup like this, right? So maybe he's defending us. And let me see, what did the other the other attorney said it was an outrageous number, and they're appealing and all that. So it doesn't mean that he's going to collect, obviously. What do you guys think of this story?
My experience has been that judges don't often award in favor of a business person. And so, I'm glad that they did. 48 million seems really excessive. But I think if you go around doing shady stuff, eventually bad things happen to you. And I don't know all the dynamics there, but it seemed like a pretty shady move.
I think it's great. F around and find out. No, no, I think that obviously I don't think this person's going to really get paid out 48 million. But I hope they do get compensated for, time and finding the deal and negotiating and then kind of being finessed at the end. I'm glad to hear that the buyer broker agreement is strong enough for them to be sued and rewarded, just like a win in court. I think obviously this person was doing something shady by discount, like crediting back all that money to her brother, I think is what it said. And I think that this is a good step forward for real estate agents because, and I think almost real estate agents created this scenario for themselves, but just like the space that we live in should be, in my opinion, I've always said like lawyer, CFP, doctor, that level of professional. And I think the market doesn't necessarily see us like that. And and so I think that them being rewarded this amount of money, or just the fact that they lost the lawsuit, kind of helps reframe where we should be positioned in the marketplace.
Maybe this is a hot take, but I think this is great because there needs to be some accountability for consumers. I mean, we work in an industry where we're not compensated until all the work is done, right? So there's so much work that is put in that we go unpaid for, and we sign up for that when we get into business. I get that, right? But it I feel like over the last few years, it's been a lot more of consumers trying to see how they can nickel and dime people in our profession when, they show up to work and they expect to get paid at their job, right? So, I definitely think the amount that was awarded is egregious, right? I don't think that that's a fair determination with the little bit of information that I have, but should definitely be more than the 84,000 because if it took 6 years to get that money, I mean, 84,000 6 years ago is a lot more money than 84,000 today.
Yeah. I want to piggyback on what Carl said also, and I just think that we need to get the credit. The fact that she gave her brother this credit back, I think we need to get that out of the industry. It's kind of ridiculous. And I think realtors need to take a stand. I don't give credits because I'm not party to the transaction, right? I don't, I'll get credit. I'll give a credit if if a buyer wants to put me on the deed, like I'll certainly give them a credit, but like I'm not part of the part of the transaction, I'm not party, so why would I give any money away? And I think that like part of the danger and like why we're not looked at as is no one ever goes to their lawyer and like, hey man, like I paid you 450 an hour, like you won the case, like you want to kick some of that back to me. And I think that that's like such a terrible thing that realtors do, and I know it happens because of scarcity, because we don't earn money until the deal closes, but I also think we need to nip that credit thing in the bud and like almost make it like illegal to do. Because it's ridiculous that like there's any suggestion that we give our money back to the consumer in any way, unless they put us on the deed or we profit from the sale. Honestly, there's no profession. I mean, lawyers don't do it, doctors don't do it. If I put 10 million with my CFP and they make money off the money they made me, I don't say, hey bro, like you think you should give me a kickback from the money you made? Like what are we doing? What are
Well,
we
and then
doing?
look, this broker brought in 5K, and I'm sure she was drug into the lawsuit as well.
Yeah, she's the
So
biggest loser on this.
that's such a small amount percentage of the deal to take for the for the trailing liabilities. Like I think agents don't really factor that in. Every deal you do has trailing liability, and maybe your broker has E&O and it's ultimately going to be on them, but you're not necessarily getting off like scot-free either. So you have to factor in the training that you're constantly having to do, all your experience, the trailing liabilities. And yeah, I agree. Like wholesale giving away credits just because maybe you stepped in last minute, like the situation, and weren't involved. I don't know. It almost that's just smells like the kind of deal where that trailing liability is going to actually be bigger because you had such little involvement so late in the game. So I think you've got a really good point there, Nick. I also agree. I think this 48 million is a crazy number. Like, that's bigger than what the Goldman family got for the wrongful death with O.J. Simpson. That was $30 million. So, which I don't think they collected that much of that either.
He tried to get it
So,
back so he can pay them out. That's why he was trying to get his stuff back.
well, he actually, I mean, he spent a
No,
lot
I'm
of
just
time in
kidding.
Florida because Florida, with the Homestead Act, protects your, your primary home, that your pension's protected. So
Oh,
he was able to live pretty large in Florida for a while till he tried to like get his autographed jerseys back, and ended up back in the slammer. But I think yeah, the broker should get the commission. Obviously, then he had legal fees, then he had the time. It's certainly somewhere between the commission amount and what the jury awarded. But I'm sure there's more to this. This is actually the second case, I think, in the last few months in Florida that we've heard about. There was another one where I think the broker was a similar kind of thing. The broker got, I think, a 20K judgment or something like that, through arbitration. Again, we
isn't
don't
it
know. We don't know how
isn't
much
it
he collected
ironic
there.
how they're like, sue you guys, you're making too much money, win the lawsuit, and now they're losing to some buyers. It's like what happened? We just like seesawed back the other way.
Yeah, and Carl, what a great point on like consumers have responsibilities too. If you sign a buyer broker contract and break it for no reason, like I think Florida's sending a message that there will be consequences. So agents, get those buyer brokers signed up. Hopefully the touring buyers and then sneaking in the commission when you write the offer, or and all that. Hopefully those days are behind all of us. You know, well, let's move on to the next story here. Google search. They've been in the news a lot lately. Obviously, they are trying to make a play at Zillow and Redfin and Realtor.com. And last week we talked about how they rolled out in 7 markets, and they're sending the listings directly, or the requests that come in on a listing go directly to the listing agent. So it's not like Zillow, right, where Zillow's like a Where's Waldo search to find the listing agent. When you're on that screen, they've got like 5 Zillow preferred or flex people, like in big bold, click here, see the home now, and then like somewhere in the fine print the listing agent's name is like misspelled, right?
And you have to click the read more button to find it.
Yeah.
It's like literally folded in somewhere.
Read more, accept terms and
Yeah.
conditions, allow the app to follow you. All right, you click all those, you can find the listing agent. Well, Google's flipping that, and now they're looking for more people to participate. So, I've got on the House Canary site here, get your listings on Google for free, and it's got an express interest button, right? And it's going to give you free listing placement, agent attribution. So Google's gonna have a click to contact feature on every listing, and they'll click your name, connect with you directly, and at zero cost. And if you click and put your information in, they're basically compiling lists. And if they're not in an MLS now, they're going to go to them and eventually and say, we've got 100 agents, 1,000 agents in your MLS that wants this. So Nick, is this going to be a good thing for consumers and for agents?
I think it's a great thing for agents. And as this comes up, I'm like, oh, this is how it should have always operated, right? Instead of listings going on Zillow, and then agents can pay X amount of dollars to kind of be the feature agent there and get those leads that come in. I think that perhaps it should have always been, hey, you're listing, you're the agent featured, and then you can pay X amount of dollars for a certain amount of leads, or maybe some feature. But I think it's great that it goes directly to the agent. It's kind of logical, you know. And I think for the consumer, like it's great, it's cool. I guess you get a direct path to the agent to ask those questions that you may have about the listing, or if you don't have a buyer's agent, you can, kind of communicate directly at first. I think that piggybacking on last week's like billionaire fight, I think with the interesting thing that's happening is like it's like, you know, the purpose of the lawsuit and the issue is like we need to make all the listings available to the consumer. It needs to be easier to search. And instead what's happening is each company is like directing the consumer in a different way. So it's actually becoming more complicated for the buyer to see all of the inventory instead of it being simplified. Because, everyone's just kind of taking their piece of the pie, you know? And so I think for the consumer, and the agent, the real thing that they have to figure out is like it's either agent count, right? Like, and not like it's like which brokerage in your city, town, marketplace has the most listings, and maybe that's where you need to be as an agent, and maybe that's where you might want to work. Might want to find an agent as a consumer too. So it's kind of weird in that space.
I think
James, I know you're big on Google local service ads, Google profile, right? So you should be in a good spot when this rolls out in our market.
yeah. You know what? I feel like the ruling in whatever year it was, 2001, where the MLS had to give public feed, it took power away and the benefits from the hard work that real estate agents and the people that put that together created, the value they created and gave it, you know, the intent was to give it to the consumer, but what really happened is uh, companies like Zillow is the most successful version, started to use that to create profits for themselves. And so it's not clear that the consumers really are benefiting from that. And, they're profiting a lot of money. So I like seeing the competition from Google, one, because the Google ecosystem has been good to me. But two, it's nice to keep Zillow in check, in my opinion. But there's a scenario where Google flexes their muscle too much and Zillow is hurt, and then Zillow isn't as powerful, and Google starts to do things that are trying to keep that profit for themselves. I mean, they've already been profiting because Zillow is paying them lots of money to show up higher in the search results. And so I think it's good for now. We'll see what it looks like in a couple of years.
Over to you, Carl.
I think that it can only benefit agents in a couple ways. The major thing I think about is how, if they're going to get more web traffic and drive web traffic away from Zillow, I mean, you're gonna the leads that you can procreate from Zillow or from Google, you're just paying for like per lead instead of pay at close. Like I've seen a bunch of frustrated real estate agents on like Facebook groups and stuff over the last couple of months about having to pay a percentage to Zillow Flex at closing. And like one story in particular was how like an agent had like they sold a house to a buyer, and then a year and a half later that buyer decided they wanted to sell that house, and they called that agent back, and that agent got the listing, and Zillow came knocking on their door and said, "Hey, you owe us, $50,000 because the terms of their Zillow Flex agreement is that they own the lead for 2 years." So they came knocking for their portion of the commission on a transaction that, was a year and a half later when the agent already created that relationship with the buyer. They did a good enough job that the buyer called them back when they became a seller, right? So I guess my only fear is like, would at some point Google try to essentially do the same thing that Zillow's doing and try to collect a percentage of commissions on the back end if they're getting a lot of web traffic and producing a lot of leads for agents?
I think if
Yeah.
Google were doing exactly what Zillow is doing now, because Google is such a big company and they've already been the target of anti-competitive practice lawsuits, I think the Department of Justice and like local offices, attorney general offices would be all over Google. What frustrates me about Zillow is they've put themselves into this position that they didn't really need to be in. And the only reason that they're there is because the MLS messed up. It's not any individual agent that messed up. The agents are there answering their phones. But Zillow, I'm not convinced there was really a need for it except for like better tech, which I guess you could say consumers wanted. But Zillow is just there, in my opinion, kind of like the mob as a gatekeeper and going to realtors and saying, hey, this was already yours as an industry. but now you got to pay me for it, and you got to pay me for 2 years.
Well, they have a sticky product. Consumers like it, and agents who can't generate their own leads, right, become chained to it, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to take these leads. You have to agree to these terms of 2 years, like other deals that come from that, right? So, if you're an agent out there frustrated by it, well, start doing the real work in real estate. Generate your own leads, right? Generate your own listings, because it doesn't matter what House Canary and Google offer if you don't have a listing to put up there, right? So generate your own listings. That in turn will generate buyers from the open houses, and that really solves all of the problems if you learn how to generate your own listing leads, right? That should be your first priority every day, is get a listing lead today, and that will solve a lot of these problems. And just on what Google's doing here, I like the fact that if an interested buyer wants to learn more about the house, they're putting them in touch with the agent, who in almost every case knows more about that house, right, than anyone else. And they certainly know more about the house than the Zillow Flex agent, who's a team member, right, on a team. And, Zillow saying, connect with a top agent and experienced agent. And in reality, most of these Zillow buyers are probably going to Flex team agents, that many of them who are new or newer in the industry, and actually don't have the experience that Zillow's touting. And that's part of what is in the consumer antitrust lawsuit against Zillow, is the buyers are kind of being baited and switched, and they think they're contacting a listing agent, but it's really this rather unexperienced agent in many cases, not all. But so I like the fact that like the lead's actually going to the person that in almost every case is going to know the most about the house. Speaking of working with agents, getting deals done, let's talk about the importance of working with a good lender and how that can actually help you win deals. Carl had, just before the show, was telling a great story about this.
Thanks, Dan. Last week, one of the agents that I work with, we had a buyer that was ready to make an offer on their dream home, perfect house. They were a move-up buyer, so they were living in a townhome. They wanted to get a single family in Fairfax, and I won't take all the credit. Okay, the buyer's agent did an incredible job, communicated frequently and at a high level with the listing agent, and built rapport. That's really important. Like, I've had some agents that I worked with that have always like said, hey, we got to meet each other from the same side of the table, right? We got to be able to work together. And, some agents have the thought process where it's like, it's me versus them, we're competitors, we're competing. And, it's good to have a competitive mindset, but, you really got to be building relationships with the people that are in your market, the other agents in your market, because you're going to run into those same people again. It's a very small world. And in a lot of markets, a small portion of agents have a large percentage of the listings. So you definitely want to get in good relationships with the people that you're going to be working with on the other side of the table. But ultimately, the buyer had the same exact offer as someone else, except the other person was $70,000 higher on sales price. And the listing agent explicitly told the buyer's agent that they were going to work with us because she worked with my team before, and she knew that we were going to deliver and do exactly what we promised we were going to do. And because she had a good experience with us previously, that allowed our buyer to secure the house, even though he wasn't the highest price offer. Saved him $70,000. Absolutely incredible.
What was the approximate price point on this one?
That was it finished at 1.53.
Wow, so they took 5% less. Were the terms similar, like closing timeframes, contingencies?
Yeah, they weren't in a rush on the closing time frame. So it was like a 21-day close, which, I would say a rush would be, anywhere from 10 to 14. So 21
conversation was like between the listing agent and the seller, because ultimately it's the seller's decision, but like I mean, gosh, I can't imagine like, yeah, the terms are similar, but this lender, I trust him more. I don't think the other one will get it done. So we should take this offer at 70K less.
Me and the buyer's agent were trying to figure out who the who the lending company was on the other offer. Because I mean, I'd like to think it's because my team's really good, but maybe part of it was also because the other one was not good at all, right?
Did they waive the appraisal and financing
Yeah,
contingency?
all contingencies were waived on
And
both
did
offers.
the on both?
Yeah.
That's one of the most insane like things I've ever heard. Actually, now that I'm
Yeah.
processing it fully.
That's why I was so fired up. And like everyone was so excited, like the buyer's agent and the buyer were so excited because the night that like things were going back and forth, they already accepted like, hey, they're 70,000 higher, like we lost this one. And then the listing agent calls the following morning and says, "Hey, we took your offer." And everyone's like super fired up.
Imagine having so much trust with your client. Like your client trusts you so much that you could say, "Hey, I know you're leaving 70 G's on the table, but this is the better decision," and they kind of accept that, That's a really skilled, solid listing agent too, gotta
For
give kudos.
for a lot of sellers, price the isn't the main thing. They just want to make sure, they've got their own timelines, and they want to know that they're going to sell. And even though the other one had waived the financing contingency, if you can say, "Hey, I've worked with this lender before," and he's like virtually certain to close, depending on their situation and what their risk tolerance is to it falling through. Because if it falls through and it goes back to market, maybe, they lose that $70,000 or more because, there's a stigma with the property now that it's back on the market.
Yeah, that's the downside, right? If the lender on that other one flakes, even if they waived everything, at most you're gonna get the deposit, which maybe I don't know, maybe on that at that price point, maybe it's a 50K deposit. Um, so maybe you keep that, but then you're down 70. But if it comes back on the market, that excitement's gone, that bidding war possibility is dampened. Yeah, the stigma. So, um, but wow, what a great job by the listing agent, and obviously the buyer's agent and Carl to win out in that situation. And I would say like working with a good lender is going to help you in those competitive situations. Now, don't get the wrong expectation here. Like, I'm not saying if you use Carl, you're going to get every home for 70K under. Um, but in tight situations, like if the offers are similar, like the lender can often put them over the edge. And you worked with that listing agent before. She liked it. Were you in communication with her during the process to like vouch for the strength of the buyer or anything like that?
That's probably my favorite part is that because we've worked together before, she didn't even call me on this offer. She knew what she was getting working with our team. So
No, the lender is important though because, and Carl, that's shout out to you, man, because I had a lender that I think early on in my career, because of where my price point was at that time, I had buyers that kind of needed help getting over the hump, and just like the lender needed to help convert, so that they could believe they could buy. And I had a lender that was great at that part, but wasn't great at getting the deal closed. And I started to run into agents multiple times, and it was like, like we're not like we love you, Nick, but that lender is a no-go. So I remember I had to like phase that lender out of my business because I mean it was kind of ruining my reputation in the marketplace. And so having a good, lending partner on your deals is so important for situations like this and just your overall reputation as an agent. So,
Carl,
that's
is
a
it
good.
part of your process to uh, after an offer is submitted to reach out to the listing agent and introduce yourself and vouch for the buyer?
yeah, that's probably the most important part, right? Because, and it's not about here, I'll just give the secret away for any other lenders that are listening to this. It's not about the song and dance of like, oh yeah, we already verified everything. They're super qualified. This is going to be a really easy transaction. Listing agents hear that stuff all the time. I mean, you still do the song and dance, but you talk about what's different about the buyer, what's different about your team. And at the end of the phone call, here's the key. is you ask them for feedback while you're still together. So if I'm working with James on an offer, at the very end of the call, I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm sure you're gonna get back to James and you're gonna tell him where we stand. But while we're together, what feedback can you give me? And then I would say 50% of the time, they just lay all the cards on the table. And they'll say, oh, I expect to get this wrapped up in the next couple hours. Or, oh, if you increase your earnest money deposit a little bit, I think my seller would go for it. Or if you move the closing date up a couple days, I think I could get my seller to take the offer. Like they'll give you 50% of the time as the lender, they will give you exactly what you need to ratify the deal. And if there's multiple offers on the table, by the time they get back to the buyer's agent, sometimes you've already lost. So get that feedback right then and there. Call your buyer's agent and tell them, hey, the listing agent told me exactly what we got to do to win. And then get with your buyer, make that change, and win the offer.
Yeah. Do you think that's because they trust you more because you're not the buyer's agent, or because the buyer's agents just don't ask? They're too chicken.
It varies. Yeah. I mean, so some of the times I think some of the times it's just based on timing. It's like, hey, half of the time when I'm talking to the listing agent, they haven't even met with their seller yet. And then the other half of the time they already presented the offer to their seller, and they already have immediate feedback for me because they already met with the seller. But like a lot of the times a good listing agent's already going to know pre-meeting with the seller, like what their seller's going to be willing to do. So I just think that it's going to vary based on like where you are in those conversations. Like when I'm having that conversation with the listing agent, what other conversations have happened since the last time the buyer's agent talked to them?
Carl, let me just like step in. I think what you said is so valuable and important for the consumer to understand. Is like your agent's job, especially in a multiple offer scenario, but in every scenario, is basically figuring out what you need to write to be able to win, right? Like what other offers do you have in hand? And personally, I find it easier in DC to do that agent to agent. Like DC agents want to do a deal. Out in the burbs, everyone's like, I can't disclose. And I'm like, are we doing a deal? Like, what are we doing? I don't know why the pace. And it really makes me upset. I've asked, Carl knows the contract, Dan and James know the listing agreement specifically says like I can disclose or I can't disclose other offers. And so sometimes I'm so frustrated. I'm like, did you check that box? Like, let's do a deal, right? But if you're working with if you're a buyer's agent reaching out to a listing agent trying to figure out what you need to write and they won't tell you, I have worked with lenders, and Carl, it's super valuable that you do this, that you can get the information on the other offers and what like the buyer needs to do to win. Like I love to call my lender back and say, "Hey, you talked to the listing agent? Yes. What's the competition like?" So then I can restructure or or give another call to the listing agent so I can put my buyer in position. So that's extremely valuable that you have a way of doing that, right? And like Carl's that's like, hey, any feedback for me, right? Is kind of like a slick way to be like, what else do you have in your hand? So I think that's great, Carl. Shouts to you, man.
Much love.
Yeah.
Oh, also be prepared that like a lot of agents are not going to be direct with you about like Nick just said, like they're not going to be very direct about exactly what you need. So you have to ask a little bit more probing questions sometimes. But Nick, you reminded me of one where like I was working with a new agent and the agent's compensation was 2.5%. They were asking for 2% in seller paid closing costs for the buyer. And like the listing agent he put it all on the table. He's like, look, I don't care where it comes from, but the two of those things, they need to be 4%. I don't care where it comes from.
Yeah.
And the buyer's agent was brand new, so she wasn't understanding. And I'm like, look, these are your options. You either lower the seller pays by 0.5% or you lower your comp by 0.5%.
Not to stand this for too long, but like I think maybe we could bring this up next podcast. Like, should agents disclose or should they not disclose? And I hate I don't know what we have, like let's guess. Like, do we have home inspection? Like, should you come up 5K in price, right? Because like deals are won in such little margin, and everyone's like, oh, more competition for the seller. Like, it's better for the seller to not disclose, so people like race to the top because they have to guess. And I'm always I'm like, I don't think that's true because we did have a marketplace, the COVID marketplace, where agents were like, yeah, like you got to be 120 over, like pre-inspection, no contingencies. And everyone just like raced to the top, right? And so like and the market didn't crash. So like the marketplace where agents were just disclosing to everyone, they were getting 20 offers and like no contingencies, right? And so I'm always like, why don't we do a deal and like figure out what we need so I can go back to my client and say, hey, do you want to do this? Like, how does it create more? How do you get another $70,000 on your offer if you don't know what else you're competing against, you know?
I think that's true in a lot of cases. Like sometimes if I'm on the buyer side, uh, I'll ask, and they'll play that game where they're like, "Oh, I can't tell you." And what I'll say is, "Hey, I totally appreciate that, but if I don't give the buyer some feedback and some coaching, and I need your help with that, then maybe they'll submit an offer that's lower, and that can negatively impact your seller. So give me a little bit of help so that I can coach the buyer." To potentially, give a higher offer, which is going to benefit you and the seller. But it's a
That's great.
balance, right? Because you don't want to give away all the cards. You don't want them to submit an offer that's like $20,000 lower than they need to. So I think like really being situationally aware of what's going on and what they're saying without saying it, and probing, like you guys are talking about, probing and asking deeper questions to paint a bigger picture.
That's great, James. I just tell them they're being ridiculous. I need to come with more chat. But then again, it just comes back to what I'm talking about, like, like where we're positioned in the marketplace. And I guess as sales, you have to be a little crafty, but I mean, your lawyer's like, yo, bro, like, you got to take this deal or you're gonna get 30 years. Like, what do you want to do? There's no like, well, like maybe you don't sign and we'll see what happens. It's like, do you want to pay out $48 million in damages? Like, if you don't, like, you probably should give them 3 million right now, right? Like, can we do a deal? Like, let's do a deal. But who knows? I'm James, I'm stealing your script.
But I think too often people aren't pushing like you're pushing, and they're scared to say like, "Hey, I get it." That's sometimes people say that, but like, let's do a deal. Give me something so that I can help you. I think not enough agents are doing it the way that you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, they should at least try. I agree, and so a lot of good takeaways from this. I think the biggest thing is like your lender is not just someone who's there to finance the deal, right? They can actually help you win the deal, win over the listing agent, and Carl's a great one. So if you guys need a lender, reach out to Carl, and no promises, but he has helped people get homes for $70K less than other offers. So, moving on, summer is almost here, right? We're coming off the end of spring market, or maybe what is the peak. But James Buckley found something interesting that says that the seasonality of real estate may be shifting.
Yeah, there's a research paper that came out of Cornell University that suggests just that. And this is nationally, but there's no reason it doesn't apply to all local markets. But the research paper's findings are that the spring market is moving earlier and earlier in the year. Instead of being April, May, it's like March, April timeframe. And schools are still letting out for the summer and starting back up again. And those are mostly anchored. But competition is driving more buyers to get into the market earlier, and the ability for buyers to, there's more remote work, and we're going back a little bit more to in-office work, but there's still flexibility on, for a lot of people on Mondays or Fridays. And so a lot of buyers are actively searching always through Zillow and Google, House Canary, and everybody. And so they're able to jump on a listing quicker. And so sellers are listing their homes a little earlier and a little earlier because they have more confidence that there will be that buyer demand to to buy their listing. And so it's shifting that spring market a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I agree. I think every year it seemed like it starts a little earlier, and then so maybe your February is better than normal. But then do you think the peak is also a little less, like you're not closing as many April, May, June?
Yeah, I mean, some people could argue that, the summer like trough or the summer quiet starts a little earlier too. And I think that that's probably true because there's a limited amount of inventory. And if that's shifting, I don't think that all of a sudden more people are listing their homes for sale in July to backfill that. The constraint on listings is not so much it's not buyer demand because the buyer demand is there. It's other factors that we've talked about, like giving up a low interest rate or their challenge with inventory themselves.
So,
Um,
so is the study saying maybe we're going to this kind of, uh, it's no longer going to be completely feast or famine. You just have to always be on, always be ready. Um, if that's the case, we've got summer coming up. Let's wrap up by talking about like the top. We'll just go with top one best thing. So it's the best thing that agents can do heading into the summer to not let their business take a vacation, even if they are.
I can jump on this. There's a strategy that I saw someone talking about recently that I'm going to implement, and it's old school. It's the handwritten note, but doing the handwritten note monthly, and where everybody's going like high tech AI, retargeting with meta ads, getting in front of people with a handwritten note with something that an attractive front of the postcard or front of the handwritten note that they're happy to put on their fridge, cutting through, and not a postcard. I know I said postcard earlier. I mean handwritten note card, but something that's personalized, and that someone can pick up and know that you spent some time. And so, if you're sending these to your past clients and your close sphere of influence, it's going to cut through a lot of the million emails that people get, and uh, you know, hit them a little deeper and maybe live on their fridge for a couple weeks out of the month, and then next month you've got a new card on the fridge.
That's something you could do on vacation, right? Bring a stack of 50 note cards and write five a day, right? If you're going on a two week vacation, it
What I like
really
about it
wouldn't
is
really interfere with your vacation.
What's nice about it is you don't have to go on to Instagram or Facebook to do it, right? And so you're not getting trapped yourself in Instagram and Facebook, losing an hour to doom scrolling. Um, and because so few people are doing it like that these days, I think that there's a real opportunity.
That's
Carl,
great.
what about you? What's one thing agents can do to not let their business go on vacation over the summer?
I'm going to say what my main takeaway and what I'm implementing from your HyperFast event. If you missed it, you missed it. John Cheplack talked about just doing the work, making the calls and sending emails. I've always been a phone call guy. Yeah, like I pick up the phone. That's where the money is made, by talking to people and having valuable conversations and connecting with people. But I've never really leveraged email well. So that's what I'm implementing in my business. And I've already started to see the results where the value of the email, if you're making a value proposition or you're bringing value to people, they're going to continue to open your emails. And if you're using a service that is telling you who is opening your emails, those are the people that are raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I want to engage with you." So it's much easier especially if you have a reasonably good sized database, it's you're better able to put your attention on the people that want to be engaged with in your database, because those people are raising their hand by opening your emails, right? Even if they're not responding. So those are the people that you want to reach out to. And when I'm having those conversations and I'm following up with people in my database, I've had people over the last week make comments, "Oh yeah, I've been seeing your emails." And like there are people, like some people that I've been talking to, like one lady, I talked to her yesterday. I've been talking to this lady for 2 years, trying to help her move the downsize. She's, a little up there. She wants to downsize, get something that's one level, whatever. She still doesn't have my number saved in her phone. When I call her, she doesn't have my number saved. But after I, reintroduce myself, she remembers me. And then she's like, oh, I've been getting your emails. Now I remember. And it's like, the point is, you're going to have more brand awareness. People are going to better recognize you. And like, if you have a reasonably good sized database, what better way to prioritize who you should be reaching out to? So put together a couple emails every week that have a value proposition that's going to bring value to your database, send that out, and then see who's looking at it and give them a call.
All right, Nick.
It's great. I recently started sending out handwritten note cards um to my people in my CRM. So I'm wondering if my note card is on anyone's fridge. So that's cool. And then I send out like 5 emails a week to my database. So I'm like a heavy email campaign anyway. But John Sheplak, shout out to him. I think that I'm always going to just say, figure out how many people you're supposed to talk to based on what your goals are. I think 30 to 50 real estate conversations is probably what you should be aiming at, right? To be able to convert buyers and sellers and investors.
Is
But
that
if you
per
give
week you're talking about?
yeah, per week, like if you could have like 30 conversations a week, talk to 5 to 6 people a day, right? You're gonna win, over time or in short term, long term. I think it's just good nurture, 5 to 6 people. And that could be like past clients, that could be new leads that come in, but 5 to 6. Um, and then obviously like some of that is follow up. So I think 5 to 6 new contacts, and then you got your, 4 to 5 people you have to follow up with. So you're having a ton of real estate conversations. But I think it's, something that agents can do a little different than just like talking to your people is throw an event. I mean, I think like headed towards the summer, school's out, like people have a little bit more free time. It's not vacation season quite yet. I think if you can figure out like a cool summer event to get in front of your people and just catch up, that's great. And of course, the power is in the invite. So as long as you have an opportunity to reach out to your people to invite them, that's a win as well because you get to potentially have a real estate conversation. So I'm gonna tell everyone to throw a party, invite all your people, and then have a follow-up plan for after the event also for the people who attended the event and for the people who didn't attend the event. And the easy script for people that didn't attend the event is, hey, sorry we missed you at the event. It was great, and then the conversation can go from there.
Yeah, I love all three of those ideas. They're all things that you can kind of build around your summer travel too. Like the event, right? That's probably something to do like the week before school gets out, right? So in most areas, probably like the first week of June because people haven't left yet. You probably haven't left yet, right? So, you can do the event there. You can actually pre-plan and write out and schedule all your emails for any time you're gone, right? You can carve out a half day. That probably gives you enough time to generate emails for like the next 90 days. And then
Nick, I'm going to call you in mastermind on events and pick your brain and because I'm on the same page. There's nothing like, I mean, it's one to many, which is awesome, but it's the richest form of communication and relationship building.
By the way, like I'm a way more of a party goer than a party thrower. So so like I'm not good at events. I just think that agent should do them, you know.
so if you're listening and you want Nick to attend your client event to just to critique it and review it for you, tell you best practices, like invite him, all right?
I'll bring the vibes.
Invite him. And then James, even your idea, like the note cards, you could pre-write those. Just mail them as you go or spread them out. So like all of those things you can kind of do ahead of time. And then I'll give two things, I guess. One that you can do ahead of time, which would be home equity reports. Like I think you go to your past buyers and do like a high quality CMA and you can mail that to them with a handwritten note on it. That's something you can do as a project, right, before you leave for your summer travel. And then the other thing I'm going to put a plug in for, which you can't do before you leave, is to stay on your calls in some shape or form. I'm not saying to like make your calls every day if it's the 2 weeks of family vacation, but you could certainly like carve out like at least 2 hours a week to do that. And even just that, you know, and make it the calls you probably enjoy most, which is like past clients and SOI. You know, even carving out a little bit of time for that can, I think, help you maintain a more consistent business. You know, because if the seasonality effects are dampening, and we've got to be always on, well, I think these are all some good ideas to balance that, right? Because yeah, we don't want to be on family vacation working 8 hours a day, but we don't want to come back and like we spend all our money on vacation, we got no deals in pipeline, right? So like, you know, if you take some of these steps, I think you can balance it all. You know, the other way to balance it all too is to come over to eXp Realty with us and build some rev share, right? It's not going to be something that happens overnight, but you know, if you're going to be in this business for 5 years, 10 years, certainly getting paid longer than your last deal is something that should be on your mind. And, you know, in a 5 year, certainly 10-year period, like you can build more passive income through revenue share than if you sold a ton, paid to live, avoided lifestyle creep, paid your taxes, and then invested it, right? Like that would fall far short from what most agents are able to build in revenue share if they carve out time and you know, actually put a little bit into it. So like, you know, if you're listening for the first time or just are on an island, haven't heard of like the eXp Realty model, like instead of franchises, instead of corporate recruiters, like the company shares the benefits of growing the company with the agents that help grow it through revenue share. They pay you the third week of every month when people in your organization close deals. And it is amazing for those that engage. And it's just one of many things in our group, you know, that we're all a part of that we help you do. So like we give you the coaching on how to do it. We get on the 3-way calls with you. So we help you build that part of your business as well as your sales business. You know, we give you the coaching and training and support around that. In fact, we offer somewhere between $40,000 to $50,000 of annual coaching through events, masterminds, online courses, mentorship. So, you know, you're not just joining eXp Realty, you're joining the Legacy Group, which just has a bunch of amazing agents. You know, James and Nick are two of them. So if you're interested in learning about how that can change your business, and how we can help support you, and you just want a no pressure, low pressure conversation, reach out to any of us on this podcast, you know, directly. You know, you can call, text, DM, whatever your preferred communication choice is. So, you know, that's enough on that, but I just want to invite you guys to that, you know, if you're curious. So, and on that note, let's wrap up the show. If you've listened this long, you certainly probably think we deserve a 5-star rating. So tap that on Apple. Leave, you know, at least a 1 or 2 sentence comment about what you enjoyed the most. And if you're on Spotify or YouTube, you can also review us, subscribe, follow on those platforms as well. So thank you everyone for tuning in. We will see you next week.
You've been listening to HyperFast Agent Growth Show with Kerry Scholl and Dan Lesniak. Real strategies, real results, real estate done differently. If you love this episode, tap subscribe and share with another agent who's ready to grow.